Please welcome back to the stage, Beth Bechtel.
Hi, everyone. Good morning again. It's my pleasure to make the introduction to this next panel. And before I bring our moderator and the panelists out, just a couple of sort of comments about this particular session. I think probably sometimes we have to sort of self-reflect at how good of a job we're doing and how much, sort of emphasis we're giving to all parts of the ag bioscience economy. And I think that probably, much like is happening in sort of all of food and agriculture, sometimes we get a little more excited about maybe some of the sexier tools, right? The sexier innovations, whether that's data and digital agriculture and drone technologies and gene editing. And I just know from some of my friends who work very closely to the livestock sector that animal ag tech has sometimes felt like a little bit of a stepchild when it comes to innovation in their part of the economy. And so with the leadership that we have here in Indiana by Elanco, United Animal Health, Fair Oaks, and so many other animal-based companies, it was very important to AgriNovus that we dedicate an entire session to the innovation that is coming in animal ag tech. And you already got a chance to see a little bit of that in our morning startup showcase. And now we're going to dive a little more deeply. The only other thing I would add, you may hear about this from the moderator, Aidan Connolly will be leading this discussion with some really outstanding thought leaders. Aidan literally just got here from Singapore. So he clearly wins the person who traveled the furthest and the person who Beth owes the first cup of beer to, or the pint of beer, as you'll hear his background. He's Irish, tonight at the reception. But please join me in welcoming Aidan and our panel of experts on animal ag tech. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm very glad they got me an espresso before I stood up here, because I started looking at all of the boarding passes United gave me, and yeah, as we all know, United was definitely going to get here, weren't they, Beth? There was no way that they were going to let me down. Anyway, it's very exciting to be here. I've had the opportunity to speak at quite a number of events recently. People seem to be getting extremely excited by AgTech, and I actually wrote a blog, which I put up on LinkedIn, talking about how technology could transform animal agriculture, and it was downloaded 26,000 times. Now, I didn't actually realize 26,000 people in the world cared enough about animal ag tech to want to read about it, let alone 2,000 words. But I did make a very short video. It's about 90 seconds, might give you a sense of this technology and what it might do. So please, you could show my video. don't know about you, I certainly want to get one of those rings that you can use to make phone calls, Fitbit, open your hotel room, whatever. That looks pretty cool. I'd like to invite out my three panelists if I could, so join me on stage. Firstly, we have Kristin Bloink from Elanco, Ronny Moser, who's coming from United Animal Health, and Clint, of course, from Maschhoffs. Kristin, could I ask you maybe take a moment just to introduce yourself, your company, and maybe even show us a couple of slides?
Sure, absolutely. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. And thanks, Beth and team, for, again, putting on such a great session. So I represent Elanco, and I lead research and external innovation at Elanco. And for us, innovation is absolutely critical to our mission of food and companionship enriching life. So next slide, please. So over 80% of our employees are committed to either the food side of our business or the companion animal side of our business, or both. And we think both sides of that business is critical. And there's a lot of synergies that cross over in the technology space and the innovation space across those segments. If you go to the next slide, the thing that Elanco focuses on, and keep scrolling through, please. Keep scrolling. So we see two segments to our business, the food animal side as well as the companion animal side. If we look at the companion animal side, we recognize that the human-animal bond is becoming more and more prevalent in developed countries as well as developing countries. It's pretty fascinating that as soon as people have a solid paycheck, they have a shingle over their head, they have confidence in the food supply and their family, they're buying pets or they're adding pets to their family. And so we think that's an important segment as we look at the industry moving forward. There's technologies in that side of the business that can cross over and work on our food animal side as well. If we flip over to the food animal side of our business, we're horrified by a few data points. 1 in 3 people in the world still aren't getting adequate nutrition. We also recognize as an animal health company that animal nutrition, animal-based protein, will be an important part of people's diets across the globe. And so we need to make sure that we're most efficient and productive in that space. And so one of the things that's horrifying to us as well is that we're still losing 20% of animals to disease and infection, and just simple productivity problems. And so, again, there's lots of opportunity there, and as Elanco, we're excited about approaching that. But we need not only our own resources, but external innovation for us to be successful in that. Thanks, Aidan.
Okay, Ronny, do you want to give us a sense of United Animal Health?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks again for the invitation, Beth and the committee. Really appreciate that. United Animal Health is an AgBioscience company based in the United States, actually based in a little town of Sheridan, Indiana, in Hamilton County. And we provide both nutrition and health solutions to livestock producers worldwide. So simply put, we feed the animals that feed the world. We are a family-owned company, and we have shareholders who are also employees who are also shareholders. And so this allows us to operate with an ownership mentality, and gives us extreme agility and ability to quickly take advantage of opportunities that come our way. Next slide. We have research is really at the heart of everything that we do. I have the privilege of leading a team of very talented scientists that are involved in all aspects of innovation and product development. These scientists will conduct industry-leading research that will discover new technologies. They're also involved in developing the products to contain those technologies, and they also are assisting our account managers in deploying those technologies through our products to our customers. And so essentially the scientists go from lab to farm. Really brings me to our mission, which is to stay close to our customers and to bring them their best solutions. And we add to that, if we don't do that, we don't deserve their business.
Okay, Clint. Clint Schwab from Maschhoffs.
Bet. Again, I'd echo the other panelists. It's an opportunity. I'd look forward to participating in the conference and can very much relate to a lot of the earlier comments that we were said at the beginning around the connection between ag, biology, and science all together. The Maschhoffs, I'm Clint Schwab. I serve as the Vice President of Science and Technology for the Maschhoffs, and I believe, as I look through the program, one of the few production companies that's represented on the business. So I apologize a little bit up front. Maybe my spin towards things is oriented a bit more towards the swine production system, but just to orient you a little bit more about what we are and what we do. The top right of the chart what you'll see there is our value chain, and you can find this on our website, and you can click on each one of these pieces, and it describes a little bit about how we create value, or how we believe we create value within a pork production supply chain. And the top part of that section shows essentially the production system from the breeding facilities all the way through. You can see there on the far right the arch there in St. Louis. We're a St. Louis-based company. And the bottom side of that chart then aligns with all of the support groups that help facilitate it and gives us the opportunity to apply innovation all the way through that system. It's about 200,000 sows, 1,100 team members. The production system can service the needs of about 16 million consumers. So we don't take that lightly. We're operated in 5 different production regions throughout the Midwest. As I mentioned, we're based out of St. Louis, but scattered across 7 different states. So if you go to the next slide, what this is meant to describe is how we apply innovation to this business. And as I mentioned before, maybe a little different spin than some, but I think we can talk a little bit about some of the challenges that relate to a production system to get implementation of innovation into the business and creating value. We look at it from a systems-based perspective. That's why you see that listed there at the top of the slide. And we would look at innovation as the merger of several different disciplines, being the animal's environment, reproductive technology, or the capacity there of the animals, genetics, nutrition, health, and animal care, all combined together. And then our innovation function also includes R&D that supports each one of those subject matter areas, and a technical support arm that allows us to get things implemented. To the point where we found over time that some of those core technical disciplines can create competitive advantage. And what you'll see there, Acuity Genetics is one externally facing arm that we have for the business that we've developed over time as well. So,
very good. So a very impressive panel, as you can tell. Now, Beth obviously gave us a little bit of a challenge, describing us as, what was it, ugly stepchild or something of the business. What's clear is that we have $6 billion going into different technologies, food and agribusiness technologies, but only about 600 million is going into AgTech. Why is the money not coming, or what do you see as being the most disruptive technologies that will arrive into animal agriculture? Maybe Clint, if I could start with you.
You bet. So first of all, I have a little bit of what we call squirrel disease. I like the bright, shiny items. There's a lot of pieces that I find interesting within this. But we talk about precision breeding, for example. I think that's one. Gene editing was mentioned. That's one of the things that could very easily be a disruptor if we can sort through some of the implementation and regulatory challenges that are out there. But beyond that, I would tell you that animal ag, and particularly swine, we're ripe for a digital transformation. So there's a lot of technologies in that space, whether it's edge computing, IoT, the convergence of some of those things could be a disruptor for us.
Ronny, thoughts on most disruptive technology?
Well, I'm glad Clint mentioned that precision breeding. We feel that's important as well, but since he talked about it, I'll go on to another one.
Good.
Microbial products, I believe, microbial products will be an innovation disruptor.
By microbial products, are you thinking probiotics? Are you thinking specific?
Thinking of direct-fed microbials, products being provided in the feed. We have a lot of research experience with those products. We are not a Johnny-come-lately. We've been in that space for 20 years, and we just. I think what we did, we swam upstream a little bit. Most of the companies are outsourcing, contract out their selection, fermentation, manufacturing, and scale up of their microbial products, but we are one of a few, I think, U.S. companies that have invested in our own fermentation tanks. So we control that production of those microbials, and we are basic down to the select, down to the strain level.
Okay.
So I think that that's going to be critical to select those strains for specific purposes to improve performance, giving the animal the ability to deal with challenges that they faced on the farms, and improve the environment that both the pigs and the people are involved with.
So, Kristin, I presume everybody knows Elanco, but you actually started with Novartis, which became Elanco. Now Elanco's taking over Bayer. I mean, it's just an enormous global animal health player. What do you see, or what does Elanco see as being the future?
Yeah, so again, we actually didn't coordinate this, but again, I think the digital piece and the data
Don't tell
piece,
them that.
as well as the nutritional piece and the microbiome, right, is that understanding is huge. But I think also, though, moving forward, and again, as a veterinarian and epidemiologist, one of the things that we work really hard in research thinking is, what is the customer problem? Let's work back to what is the right technology platform to solve that. And fortunately, from that evolution of Elanco, we have strong vaccine opportunities, we have strong small molecule opportunities, we have some nutritional opportunities. We can play across the whole spectrum. And for me, the space that I think is most attractive right now is that immunomodulatory space. So thinking about biologics and those new age biologics, whether those be just new technology platform vaccines, nucleic acid type vaccine approaches, obviously viral vectors have entered this space, but also just thinking about immunomodulators. And so thinking about monoclonal antibodies, thinking about peptides, things like that. And as we think about bovine respiratory disease complex, we think about porcine respiratory disease complex as two good examples. We know they're very complex diseases with a plethora of agents causing them, bacteria, viruses, et cetera. We have some solutions, but in many cases, the efficacy level is not adequate, or we're hitting some of the problems, but we're not hitting all of the agents causing the disease state. And so I'm super excited about, again, what we're seeing kind of coming from the human biotech space, again, that weird bridge from companion animal, and we're seeing how we're making that work in the food animal space, and I think there's lots of opportunity there.
So if you look at food technology, and maybe this is simplistic, but I've always felt that the food business in the application or use of technology is probably about 10 years ahead of agriculture, but probably even within agriculture, crop seems to be 10 years ahead of animal AgTech. And too many times, a lot of these AgTech startups seem to fail. They seem to really struggle to get traction. Have you any sense, Clint, perhaps start with you, why do AgTech companies fail? Is that normal in terms of technology, or is it specific to our field?
I think there's probably lots of reasons for it. In general, there's lots of technologies that are out there, and I would say in animal agriculture, it's a bit embarrassing where we're at with some of the technologies that we have.
Embarrassingly good or embarrassingly bad?
Bad. I mean, there's opportunities out there that we're just not taking advantage of.
Yeah.
And we as a system would look at things like, if, for a pork production system, for example, if technology shows up in a feed truck or an animal to the farm or in a semen tube, it's generally pretty easy to implement. The more disruptive technologies that have to interact with the workforce on the farm makes it just a whole nother dimension of how we get things done, and that creates all the challenges. Our leadership team would say that our three biggest challenges going forward, and I liked some of Beth's comments early on because of this, is our three biggest challenges going forward would be number one, people, number two, people, and number three, people. And so you get to the point where those technologies have to be able to be implemented on farm and work with the current production format that we have, barns and pigs and so forth.
Are you suggesting that people don't grow up aspiring to be pig farmers anymore, or to be processing in a processing plant? Is that the challenge of getting labor?
Getting labor is a big problem. It's actually getting to the labor, but it's the skill set of the labor that we have today is different. I'm not saying it's bad or good, but there's less people growing up on the small family farms that then end up being employees of our systems. They have a different skill set, and I think that's inherently an opportunity in this too. Technology works with and can work with the newer employees that we have.
Kristin, you must get pitched all the time. It seems though a lot of the tech companies are tech people, but they don't understand agriculture. Is that fundamentally where that gap comes from?
Yeah, you're spot on. I think what we see is quite a bit. About half of our portfolio comes from external opportunities, so we are out there constantly looking. And the thing that we see is somebody's got some interesting technology happening in the lab. They do a small scale up, maybe to a set of 8 pigs or 10 head of cattle, and then are off to the races thinking that this is the next greatest thing, whereas they haven't considered all of the confounders in that normal production cycle, or even thought about the fact that you have different production systems as you look across the globe or even across perhaps the United States, and you really need to be doing that proof of concept in those true production systems, understanding really what those confounders potentially are. And so we end up kind of taking them back and saying, okay, we really need to set this proof of concept up in this sort of way, and there's a lot of attrition that happens in that step. So it's really kind of, and we feel bad about that because, again, a lot of money is wasted and time is wasted, assuming that 10 pig little controlled setting somehow is answering the big question of whether this will work in the true production setting.
Ronny, my sense is that there's an awful lot of money out there looking to invest in AgTech, and the deal flow, as they call it, there just aren't enough startups. In fact, I think it's a massive opportunity for Indiana if you can get people with the ideas on farm. But have you a sense of why AgTech companies, when they come through your door, why they're not prepared or what they need to do to be better?
Yeah, I agree that they're not prepared. I agree that we are behind. And I think there are some companies that are not very familiar with agriculture, but there are some companies out there. We happen to, one of our partners self-proclaims himself as a nerd that actually knows something about pigs. So I think they are out there, and we can, and basically he and his team are helping us with digital solutions. Things like feed allocation systems, which help customers get the right feed in the right bin at the right time. Individual identification of animals for transparency and traceability. These are the solutions that come, but they're coming from some groups that actually come prepared, knowing agriculture, knowing pig production, knowing animal production.
So kind of dig into that a little bit more, because I don't, maybe everybody in the audience understand this, but when I started with my startup, Cainthus, we realized that we're watching cows using cameras and artificial intelligence, that people actually don't have the time to watch their cows anymore. So they don't actually know how much a cow eats on an individual basis every day, or drinks every day, or how they behave, because we've trying to manage 400 cows, 4,000 cows. And the same thing exists if you look at the differences between the top producers, Ronny, in the United States in hog production and the lowest. We look obviously at the productivity of China. It seems that there's just massive, massive opportunities to improve productivity using technology. Is that fair?
It's very fair. Clint mentioned earlier about the precision breeding. I think that there's real efficiency there's a lot of innovation that can come into precision reproduction. So there's tremendous opportunities to improve reproductive efficiency, and also labor saving. I think that's an important aspect. Some of these sow farms and animal production units are starving for labor. They can't find enough labor, and so solutions, disruptive innovation, technologies that can reduce their labor requirements.
Make things simpler.
Yeah, go ahead, Clint.
I think to bolt on to what Ronny just mentioned, anything that innovation-wise that can make the job simpler really helps. And I think with whether it's camera technology or ability to take us from data-rich, where we're data-rich and information poor, to something that where we can move beyond I'm generalizing, but beyond the general paradigms of managing production systems based on common biology standards to something where we can understand the underlying biology a little bit more, to where we can leverage it. I think that's an opportunity for us to take production levels and efficiency to a different level.
But I think the US meant 25, 26 pigs per sow at the moment on average, and yet we know the top ones are well over 30. So that's a massive gap. How do you mentioned labor, you mentioned labor. After labor, what comes next?
Labor.
I guess I walked into that one. And you probably would hear the same thing in terms of, obviously, the use of robots now to milk cows. You hear the same thing in chicken farms. Certainly processing plants are not attractive jobs anyway, and increasingly it's hard to find people.
And I think on the labor front, and maybe it's just because it's front and center for us as an organization, but the technologies that can bring to the table a simpler process and ability to take what we do today, make it easier and more effective, that allows us to work at the detail level, is what really is the difference between that 25 PSY and 30 PSY.
Kristin, when we think of African swine fever, obviously a subject of the day, half of the pigs of China, quarter of the world's pigs have died. That's creating a huge existential threat to the whole meat business globally. Of course, some of the chicken guys are happy and some of the beef people are happy, but the reality is you can't have something happen like that without huge consequences. Does that open up, I mean, should we be even pursuing vaccines to a greater degree, speed of vaccines, or do you think it's more complex than just simply vaccines?
Well, gosh, we can go ahead in a lot of territory there. But I would say in general, again, going back to the concept of, what kind of technologies do we need to solve the problem? Now, I will add, though, that, it's not like African swine fever hasn't been being worked on for quite some time, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of very smart researchers working on that space for a very long time. There are not vaccines and effective solutions because it's a tricky target. So I'm excited that there is a lot of energy and vigor going on right now, but it is a hard target. I think, antivirals, certainly chasing vaccines, I think is critical. Biosecurity, right? Management systems, thinking about how you're controlling that space, I think is even more important at this point in time. To be focusing on those kind of things, the bioprotection piece for sure.
Maybe I could just ask, does anybody in the audience have a question for our panel? So it's hard for me to see, but anybody want to put up a hand? We've got a hand here in the middle. Could we get a microphone, please? Okay.
If you have a question, you can go to any one of the 4 microphones in the corners of the room.
Okay, come on. Yes.
So my question is more of an idea, I guess I'm going to throw out there. You mentioned immune modulators and microbial products as being very important. Well, I'm in the fuel ethanol business, and DDGs are really taking precedence in animal feed at this point in time. About 7 years ago, I pitched the concept of putting enzymes that were used in biotech into a yeast, and that has taken over the field. We've now reduced enzymes by 90% in ethanol plants, and it's been supplanted by yeast technology. Have you ever thought about putting a microbial product into a yeast fermentation system in a plant to deliver those products into the animal feed for animal health? Thank you.
Great question, thank you. Ronny, do you feel comfortable with that one?
Well,
nice, easy one for
maybe
you.
we should talk. I think the things that we are interested in, it kind of comes through, we got a big funnel, a lot of innovation comes our way. But I think some of the things that really seems to work best for us is things that can be taken through the feed. So, and certainly we're in that space now, and very basic in the space with microbials, and I think it's a possibility.
Why do you like feed delivery? What's the attraction of feed?
I think that there's still a lot of opportunity for innovation. I would suggest to you that one thing that we still believe in is that animal nutrition still has space for innovation. Yeah. I think there's a general thought that animal nutrition has become commoditized and there's no room for innovation. We firmly believe that's not the case. Okay. And so things like this, vaccines, other opportunities that can come our way that could be, because the pig's going to eat every day. Yeah. And the animal's going to eat, poultry's going to eat every day. So
maybe I shouldn't have thrown you that question, but from my own, I worked 28 years with AgTech, and I know one of the attractions of feed is they do eat every day. So if you get it in the feed, you know that you're not going to have to explain to them how to put in the water, how to vaccinate, or have some other involvement. There's some continuous. Any other questions? Anybody else want to put up a hand?
So Aidan, maybe on,
Yeah,
on that
please.
last one, I mean, again, I think I'd like to chat with you as well. There's definitely a couple of companies out there, some innovative startups looking at that large molecule protein expression in plant-based systems, and I think have some interesting, inroads into that space. And I think, again, price point is critical, right? And so, and then also just figuring out how that works, right? So are you then extracting it from the plant material? Are you purifying it? How are you actually then delivering that to the animal? But I'm excited about the vigor in that space, and there definitely is some good momentum. Certainly interesting area. Thank you.
I'd brag on my colleagues here a little bit too. Some of the differences in conversations over time. It's not so much about just nutritional products or bugs and drugs. It's actually about how does nutrition and health interact with the gut of the pig, right?
Yes.
That it helps with performance. And so when you start to put some of those technologies together, we're talking about different things today than we haven't before, right?
Yeah, well, we've certainly started to realize we're not just feeding the animal, sometimes we're feeding the bacteria, the bugs in the animal. Gentleman over here, question please.
Yeah, a recent hot topic in AgTech is surrounding plant-based meat. So how do you guys feel that's going to affect the animal industry?
So when I was in Singapore, I called it fake meat, and somebody from the audience literally said, "Thank you, Boomer," which I did not appreciate at all. Anyway, let's not call it fake meat. What do you think about alternatives to? Oh,
Clint
yes.
has opinion, I bet.
You're going to delegate that one to Clint. So you've got 200,000 sows. You're probably growing, I don't know, the guts of, 5 million pigs a year?
Yeah.
You going out of business soon?
No.
No.
At least we don't believe so. I would tell you, our viewpoint is to watch. And we will always say that, choice at the consumer level is a good thing. But I don't see this, at least from my viewpoint, that this is something that's going to completely take away what we do today as a technology. There's opportunities there, I believe, and I think there's obviously a lot of investment in that space, and things will evolve, but I'm not the expert to tell you exactly where it's going to go.
Well, there seems to be, maybe I'll pass it to Ronny, it seems to be 3 technologies I'm looking at. There's insect proteins, there's the texturized soybeans, which actually in this state could be really interesting, creating meat from peas or beans. And then you have the third option, which is to grow it in a petri dish. Do you have a sense of which one of those is going to be better? And any view, in fact, but.
I don't. I think the one that's getting all the press, obviously, is the plant-based meat product. I would suggest it sort of flies in the face of what we do a little bit, because we feed the animals that feed the world. And I'm wondering if the price points for these, now I appreciate that there's a lot of technology in that, and it's very important to go forward with, but I just wonder if the price of this technology is going to be affordable for all the world. And I think some of the way that we are bringing meat products to feed the world is, and particularly in the U.S., which is the most economically efficient meat producer in the world. So
Also the most economically efficient producer of soybeans, but.
that's true. That's true.
Clint, any thinking? Which one? Do you like insects? Do you like
I'm
petri
a
dish
big
meat?
insect fan.
You're a big insect fan. You're going to be eating insects. I can tell. Do you like yours? Do you like them medium rare, or do you like them medium?
Crunchy.
Okay, medium.
Yeah.
Crunchy in the middle.
The celled cultured meat seems to be the furthest out, from what I understand.
Yes.
Just in terms of cost efficiency and just building the supply chain.
Yeah.
So it feels like the insect or the plant-based proteins probably have the biggest segue, at least in the short run.
And the insect meal has huge opportunities to be fed as a protein within feed as well.
That's right.
Absolutely.
But the petri dish, I guess I've read stories about how many antibiotics you have to use in a petri dish to keep it clean. So that sounds like it's got a little ways to go. Kristin, do you have a sense of this?
Yeah,
Is Elanco worried about fake meat?
I think we're focused on that 20% I showed you on my slide, right? So we're still losing a lot of efficiency and effectiveness of the production animals that are out there, and how do we continue to help improving that? So I think we're hyper-focused on animal protein is going to continue to be an important element in many, many people's diet across the globe, and that's what we're going to focus on, because that's what we do well. I think these other, again, I think customer opportunity to choose what you want is important. I think the key is making sure that there's transparency, like we're trying to do in our own industry, and hopefully, again, insect-based proteins and cellular-based proteins, again, there's transparency and the public knows what they're eating and what they're buying. And so
maybe I just throw a question to you to give us some sense. So we've all got, loads of money, obviously. We'd like to invest in something in AgTech. Maybe it's through our 401k or otherwise. Is there a technology that will become a unicorn in AgTech? Is there a technology that you'd advise the audience to consider researching or investing in? Don't all go quickly.
So I'm,
Kristin, what would you see as being the winning technology in AgTech?
I am really a translational junkie. I'm a One Health concept kind of person because I think there are dots to connect between the sustainability piece, the animal side, the human side, and the environment. And I really am excited about the microbiome space. And really understanding that gut-brain axis, understanding what's going on in the gut that is shaping everything from behavior to productivity to immune function in the body, whether that be a pig, a cow, a fish, a person. And so to me, that's that space. And it has a lot more basic science needs to be done for us to really understand and characterize what's going on across the guts of all the mammals and the non-mammals in our world. And to me, that's a big unicorn.
Ronny, unicorns out there.
Oh, she took mine.
She took your unicorn. My God, stolen unicorn found.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Nothing else to add?
Nothing else.
No? Okay. Yes. Microbiome as well?
I would say that I'm less certain about whether it's actually leading technology or disruptor or if it's enabling. But I think the information space is really, really important, and how a lot of the various technologies come together to drive efficiency, I'm really, really interested in. I don't have necessarily one that I think I'm willing to say is the disruptor, but I think some of those technologies together can really make a change.
Yeah, as we know more precisely exactly what we're feeding, exactly what is happening in the barn.
I think it's very complementary to what they've, even the microbiome space.
Yeah. Well, as always, in the interest of time, our panelists will be around for the day. I will as well. Looking forward to talking to you more. This is a great opportunity to hopefully show the excitement that's out there around animal ag tech. Beth, thank you very, very much.